Hi, everybody. This is Kevin with Garrison Dental Solutions, and sitting across the table from me here down in our studio in Spring Lake is Kendall. She is standing by to help with any technical issues that you might have as we get rolling. So if you do have any trouble with audio or visual, go ahead and type that into the question area and she'll try to help you out. And then at the end of our session here today, she'll also go through any questions that you type in and we'll try to get those answered. So first thing I need to say today is today's presentation on the deep margin elevation kit is not a CE event. This is, we're looking at a Garrison product that has been just introduced, and it's really talking about the product, a little bit about the technique, and it is not for CE today. So we're not going to waste any time on anything else. We're going to get right into this. So let's talk about deep margin elevation in and of itself. Why is deep margin elevation something that you're hearing more and more about, and what are the goals of this particular procedure? This really is a biomimetic, very conservative dental procedure where what we're trying to do is not have to do a more invasive procedure. We're trying to save as much tooth structure as we can, restore an existing tooth rather than having to replace that tooth, either declaring it as unrestorable and having to do an extraction and implant. If we can save it, great. And the technique is not brand new by any stretch of the imagination. It's been around for a number of years, and there's some really quality studies out there showing that you can have long-term success with it. And one of the keys to that long-term success is getting that great seal of the matrix band against that really deep localized margin. You can see this particular case is from Dr. Matt Najad out in Beverly Hills. And Dr. Najad actually was one of the principals in helping develop this product, the deep margin elevation band itself. He had approached us a number of years back where they were taking the real matrix bands, the regular size Toffmeyer bands, and cutting them down to do this procedure. And of course, anytime you trim a matrix band down like that, it's kind of raggedy and sharp and not exactly the shape that you're really looking for. So he approached us and said, hey, I think we can, with a little bit of work, we can develop a band that really works well for this. So we worked with Dr. Najad and launched that band a number of years ago, but we didn't really have a convenient way for folks to get the necessary materials in a convenient form to be able to start doing these procedures with it. So that's really what we've recently done. Now, why is this band, the main band, better at sealing deep margins? The image I put up there is a bit of an exaggeration, but certainly with a tall, normal-sized Toffmeyer type band, the anatomy of the tooth itself can block the ability of the gingival margin to cinch up tight against the tooth. So this, again, being the critical part of the deep margin elevation, you need to get that matrix band at the gingival margin, tight up against the tooth and down into the sulcus, and it's difficult to do with that type of band. So by trimming that band, making it extremely narrow and creating a more significant conical shape to it, it allows that band to be able to, first of all, be past the most bulbous portion of the tooth anatomy and allow it to actually slide down. The tighter that you tighten the band, the farther it slides down the neck of the tooth so that you can get it appropriately subgingival. The reels themselves are preferred over the regular Toffmeyer type band, Toffmeyer retainer, simply because that big metal retainer can torque and displace this tiny band and cause it not to seal appropriately. So the reel, being a very lightweight plastic, there's no additional long handle or anything on there to cause it to torque out of position. It really makes it the ideal delivery mechanism for this band. We do have these bands available in a Toffelmeyer, just a plain band that you can load into a regular Toffelmeyer retainer. However, they are more difficult to use than the reels. And of course, you've got just maximum working room because these reels are so small. And we'll put one on a Type-A-Knot here in a minute so you can see how that really looks. Now, this case is just a great example of what you can do with this. We see a prepped, very deep localized margin, and after the deep margin elevation, we have a very nice emergence profile and a tooth ready to be to receive a final definitive restoration. It's much easier to scan or take an impression with that subgingival margin raised up appropriately, as well as just being much more efficient in the bonding of a final definitive restoration. So we saw this picture, of course, shortly after the application of the band. And here's what we're talking about. Anatomy-wise, can sometimes block a regular Toffelmeyer from seating as far gingival as you'd like it. Here we've got the cusp of this particular restoration. You can see where that could potentially, if the band was all the way up the side of the tooth, that this cusp could prevent portions of this band from sealing properly against the lower portions there. So now we've got an increment or two of composite where we've completely sealed, done a immediate dent and seal on the tooth. And here we can see after the final couple of layers have been placed, we can see here we've got a nice portion. Of course, we can't see right where the view is blocked here, but you can imagine that this continues through the whole interproximal space where we've got this now, slightly supragingival, so that we can get those really good definitive margins on our scan or on the impression, so we can get properly communicate to the lab how we want that thing put together. So it is not a technique that you're using all the time. It's not going to be something daily or weekly that you're necessarily going to be doing, but when you're going to try to salvage a tooth like that, it's a great way to go. Now, the kit itself, and we're going to take a look at the kit here in just a second, but I wanted to throw this up on the screen so you had an idea of what this the part number and the price and so forth is for this particular kit. The full kit with the handle, just as you see there, is $399 is the suggested retail here in the United States. It is available in the US right now, direct only. I don't think any of the dealers have this in stock at this particular moment, but we do have them here ready to go in the US. They'll be available in Canada about the end of the month. And then in the Pacific Rim, Latin America, Asia, they'll be available towards the end of this month as well. If you happen to have a Supermat or a Garrison Real Matrix handle that looks like this, you can get just basically a refill kit that has the materials in it for $159. So it does use the same handle as Supermat and Real Matrix. It's interchangeable. So if you've got one, go for the DME02 kit. $159 is the suggested retail on that. And now I'm going to put this up on the screen here. And then in just a second, like I said, we're going to put some of these on a Type-A-Knot and take a look at that. If you use the code from today's session, that WB922D, WB922D, you can use that online for that DME01 kit, and we will give you a $20 store credit off a future order. So that's if you want to give this a try, that's a great way to go. Screenshot this, and then when we're done here today, you can jump out online and get that kit, get the $20 store credit on it. Contact information if you have additional questions after we close here today. You may want to screenshot this as well. If you're up in Canada, you want to talk to Stephanie. Her contact information is there. If you're here in the US, you want to talk to Rich. Randy is our Asia Pacific, Latin America, Africa person. So his information is there, and the kit is not going to be available in the UK or in Europe. So apologize for that, but it's just some restrictions we have on where we can actually sell the product. All right, I'll leave that up on screen for just a second. I'm going to turn the camera on here, and we're going to look at the parts. Okay, let's turn that off so this gets big on the screen for you. All right, ta-da, big white box, right? This is exactly what you would get with the kit. All I did here was take the shrink wrap off of it. Quick unboxing here. We've got the kit with the components in it. We'll take a look at all of those. And then the tensioning instrument. This, of course, being the Dash 01 kit for $3.99. So the kit itself, there are 80 of the fusion wedges. Of those of you who are familiar already with fusion wedges, they are the same wedges that we use with our regular sectional matrix system. Pull this up closely here. We've got the little, I'm going to have to zoom in differently. We'll look at that a little bit closer in a second, but they're the fusion wedges with the little fingers on it, little rubber fingers to really adapt well to the interproximal space. Of course, extremely important when we're trying to get the seal that we need to get that's required to do a proper deep margin elevation. The sectional bands that are in here, there are 35 sectional matrix bands. These are the firm bands. So they are not dead soft. We have a small size with a subgingival extension on it. Some standard ones, just a handful of those. And then there are a larger quantity of the, like this, kind of hard to grab just one of those, of the large size with the subgingival extension on it. The reason that there are some of these firm sectional bands in the kit is that there are occasions when the restoration is not as wide as like the example case that we just showed you. You know, if it is a little bit narrower, localized, deep margin, there are occasions when you can do that with a firm sectional matrix band. The key there, the dead soft bands for this technique can be difficult to drive as deeply as you need them to be in order to do these really deep margins. So the firm bands, being made of a much stiffer metal, they resist deformation. You can drive them down into the sulcus to get them deep enough. And then there, of course, are 50 of the deep margin elevation reels. So let's take a look a little closer. Let me zoom in. And a long ways to go here. Hang on with me just a second. We get this nice and close so we can see the details. And we'll get them on the typing on here. Okay. So this is a regular real matrix Toffelmeyer type band. And here is the deep margin elevation band. And you can see how much narrower that band is. And then if we look at it this way, you can see that extreme conical shape that forces it to slide down the neck of the tooth as you tighten it. So you can see that again, with a really tall regular band, it makes this technique very difficult. And you can see why Dr. Najad, after trimming these manually for years, approached us to make them like this. So much more convenient to have it pre-trimmed, nice smooth edges on it and everything. And that advanced conical design just really helps pull it down into the sulcus. Now we can take a look at, of course, the fusion wedges a little bit more closely. There you can see the little fingers out there. Having a little, are we okay? We had a little feedback issue there on our end. Sorry about that. And then we can look at the firm bands too. You can see here the subgingival extensions on this large size. So and I should say the handle that comes with it can be used for the regular reels as well. So you could pick up refills of the different sizes of everything that's in the DME kit, as well as refills of the regular Toffelmeyer type bands if you want to use those for certain restorations as well. But if you haven't seen the how a reel matrix works, the handle, you push the ball forward and it extends a gear and little grippers. There is a splined indentation in the top of the reel that the gear fits into, and then you retract the ball. You can see that it grips it very nicely, and then you twist or turn the ball to tighten and loosen this, which we'll do on the Type It On here. And that, of course, after you've placed it, you can then push the ball forward and release it. And all that is in the mouth is this, and the tiny little reel. So it's a very convenient form to deliver this type of a matrix. And, you know, if you're doing a core buildup, maybe you're doing a DO on number 1 or number 16, you know, where there's no opposing dentition, you could use the actual reel matrix, regular size matrix itself to restore those. It's a very, as far as a replacement for the traditional Toffelmeyer retainers, this is really an ideal system for that. So let's grab the Type It On and look at what this placement of this. So what I've got are 2 types of deep restorations or deep preparations here. One of which we've trimmed away the interdental papilla on the Type It On to simulate using electrosurge or soft tissue diode laser, some other or a tissue trimming burr to remove some excess interdental papilla. That is sometimes necessary to give you the appropriate access to do this technique. Now, there are out on our YouTube channel, if you go to Garrison Dental on YouTube and search up deep margin elevation or search Dr. Matt Najad or Dr. JD Corey, you can look at some of the videos that we have out there where they go into a lot more detail about the actual whereases and why-fors of how to properly do this technique. So I would strongly encourage you to do that. But for what we're going to look at today, I've got these 2 types where the interdental papilla has been left in place and where it has been trimmed away. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and on the one that has a little bit of papilla in there, I'm going to slide this matrix around the tooth, get it positioned, and to help it to slide down initially, you may have, it's kind of hard to see, but I actually put a little pressure. I pulled the reel a little bit to the side, and that allows me to just slide it down quite nicely. Then I'm going to apply the handle, and I'm going to put my fingers on the front part of the ball here so that I'm actually pulling back on the ball while I tighten this, and that keeps the gear and the hole and the little grippers pulling tight so that I maintain positive contact with that reel and can tighten it. So I pull back on this while I tighten it. See, that's the direction. And as I tighten that, it's just sliding right down. Let's see if we can see how deep that's gone. It just slides right down the neck of the tooth to make sure that it's down as deep as it can possibly go. When I have it, when I'm satisfied with how tight it is, I push the ball forward and I release it. The final step to achieve an appropriate seal on that band is to place something, and I stress the word something, to provide pressure against the band into the bottom of the box to seal it against the tooth. Depending upon how much interdental papilla there is, how deep this is, whether you've trimmed the soft tissue back with electrosurge or soft tissue diode laser. If you've done some kind of tissue management like that, then you may be able to place a wedge. The key being, if it's so deep that the wedge ends up pushing the band into the box, then we have to use some alternative method to seal that matrix band, either super floss or maybe several lengths, or let me grab, oh, right there. You knew what I was, Kendall's done this enough with me. She knows what I was reaching for. A little bit of Teflon tape. I've got this really thick Teflon tape that I can take a couple of layers of and twist it like a thick piece of floss potentially, and get that down in there. Even sometimes, if necessary, using an instrument. In fact, that's probably a little too thick. Using an instrument to pack it down almost like a cord. Some people will, in fact, use tissue retraction cord and pack it down in there so that they can push that band up against the tooth and make sure that it's sealed tight. Now, if the tissue has been removed, like it is on number 2 here, let me go ahead and show you how to remove one of these. I'm going to just reverse the process. I'm going to grab the reel, I'm going to retract the ball, and then I'm going to apply pressure outward on the handle. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to apply some outward pressure while I am turning. There we go. While I am, see that outward pressure while I loosen it. Okay, that's how you get it to pull the material out of the reel, that little bit of outward pressure. I'm going to just put the same one back here. I'm going to tighten it down. And in this scenario, because the tissue has been removed, I can wedge that, and my wedge is down below the matrix band, pushing the band against the tooth. So it's not impinging or forcing the band into the box to create a divot. We want that emergence profile to be nice and smooth. And if we've dimpled the band in over top of the bottom of the box, you're going to have a dimple in that, and you're going to have a spot there that can really be a food trap. So we want to make sure whatever we're using for the final seal on the matrix band is down below that edge of the box. Okay, so let's talk about double band technique. If for some reason you are unable, that the tooth is shaped in a manner that it's not allowing the deep margin elevation band to slide subgingivally, there are times when you can do what we're referring to as a double band technique. I'm going to loosen this up just a little bit, where we're applying a combination where I'm taking a firm band, and I probably have to take this off all the way to get that band on there, where I'm taking the firm sectional band, possibly even trimming this to make it more narrow if necessary, whatever I need to do to get the shape appropriate, and I can drive that down because it's not going to distort on me. Get that, grab it here. There we go. I can push down, apply apical pressure, and really drive that band extremely deep, and then come along. Let's get a fresh band. Come along behind it and use my deep margin elevation band to almost like a belt and suspenders, right? You down on there. There we go. And use this to cinch that band tight up against the tooth. So now I've secured the sectional band that I was able to drive as deeply as I needed to go, because it's only going around part of the tooth. Let's say if there's something on the backside of this tooth preventing the reel from dropping deeply enough, I can drive that sectional band as deep as I need it to go and then cinch it tight up against the tooth with a reel like that. So that's called the double band technique. And I think, doesn't one of Dr. Najad's videos, he's got some clinicals of that.
I do believe, oh yes, that one is released, and then the double band technique demonstrated by Dr. Corey is releasing next week.
Okay, yeah, so we've got some really good stuff coming out here in the next little while to help support you and your quest to master this particular technique. So that's the double band technique. It's one of the reasons why we have the sectional bands in the kit. And again, there are times when you will be able to wedge, and there are times where you will not be able to wedge, and you'll have to use some sort of an alternative method like I outlined prior. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for what we wanted to cover today. If you've got a question, I can't answer if we're starting to get too technical with the technique. I won't be able to help too much, but we can reach out to some of our staff doctors, not really staff, but our adjunct faculty, we'll call them, and get answers to technical questions if they're beyond the scope of what I can help with.
Yeah, one question is in already, but you did kind of answer it, however, a little bit indirectly. Okay. So when you are using the double band technique, can you also wedge?
Yeah, again, it's going to come down to where does the wedge sit? And you can use a wedge while you're prepping to kind of help you out to determine whether you're going to be able to use a wedge in the final application of the band. So if you pre-wedge and you start to prep the tooth and you get to, I'm going to zoom in even closer. You can see this is a really good example where if I had prepped this and I saw I had this much wedge intruding into the area of the prep, that you're not going to be able to use a wedge when after your band is placed. This one we saw earlier, it is one that I can wedge that and I'm not displacing that band into the box. Okay, so again, it comes down to how deep is deep. If even after you've trimmed tissue, the bottom of that box is right where the remaining papilla is interdentally, you're not going to be able to get a wedge in there because it's just going to impinge the band into the box.
What were the recommended materials to use if you're not able to use a wedge?
Right, super floss. It's that poofy floss. I've seen both Dr. Corey and Dr. Najad have demonstrated that. So if you go out and watch those videos, you can see that you can pull that tight, floss it down in position, release it. You don't need a tremendous amount of pressure to seal that band, and it doesn't have to remain sealed for very long. You need it sealed to bond, do your bonding, and then enough time to put a couple of layers of composite in there, very thin layers. You're not packing the composite in there and trying to displace that band. So it is something that it doesn't need a lot of pressure. So super floss, regular floss, a couple of thicknesses of it, a couple thicknesses of Teflon twisted into a piece of floss, or gingival retraction cord. And then, of course, with the retraction cord, you have the added benefit that you could apply a hemostatic agent to that too, because of course, if you down that deep, there is going to be some bleeding, and that can help control it.
So far, that's it for questions.
Okay, well, we'll hang out here for just a minute in case anybody has any other questions. I will put the contact information back up on the screen here. So if you've got, you want to talk to somebody about getting one of these, you can take a screenshot of that. Also, let me go ahead. I want to put this special back up on here. WB Walter Bravo 922 D as in David. You can use that code on the website right now to get the kit and get a $20 credit off of future orders.
And we will have a recording of this session available probably by Monday, midday Monday, for you to review if you would like to do that as well.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, it is not a CE event. We will not be sending out an evaluation and quiz, so don't look for that. We will send out a copy of the recording, though.
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. If there are any other questions, we're going to go ahead and close this off today. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, you can get this kit direct from us right now, direct here in the U.S. and through dealers in the U.S. and Canada around about the end of the month, and Asia Pacific Rim as well. Thanks, everybody.